This is the latest installment of Conversations with John Friedman. Today we're joined by Jim Lehrer, who is the anchor of the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer on PBS. Jim, welcome.
Hey, thank you, John. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure having you on our show.
Thank you.
As you can imagine, there's a lot of talk these days in the media about a media bias toward Barack Obama and against John McCain. What do you think?
Well, I don't think the word bias is a pejorative term, obviously. I don't think it applies at all. I think that the ebb and the flow of the news are what dictates whether there's a certain number of stories about Obama versus a certain numbers of stories about McCain, whether some of them are positive, some of them are negative. It wasn't that long ago where everybody was accusing the media of being biased toward McCain. Everybody had a love affair with McCain. The bottom line on this is, now I am not a student, I don't read every word in every major newspaper or magazine. I certainly don't listen to every word on radio and on television and read all the blogs and all that. So I'm not a big expert on this, but based on my what I do what I do see at the media, what I read and what I do hear and see, it is the result of events. And certain things are happening. Obama's doing something, there's more coverage of that. And when McCain is not doing very much, so there's less coverage of McCain. And I don't think bias has anything at all to do with it. I've been watching this stuff for over 40 years, and most of the coverage, 99% of the political coverage that I see in the mainstream media is driven by what happens, not by anybody's bias.
You'll be in Minneapolis and Denver this year for the conventions. What are some of your favorite memories of past conventions?
Well, the first one I went to was the 1968 conventions, and I've been to many of them. I've been to all of them since then. I tend not to focus on magic moments in conventions. I don't see it as entertainment. I don't see them as, quote, events, much like you would see a circus or a movie or anything like that. It's who they nominated, what the nominees said, how that went down in the hall, but most importantly, how it went down in the country. So I'm not fixed on any particular. I don't have any favorite convention moments. I've had one. I love them. I love them. They are the lifeblood of this process. Every 4 years, it leads to who's going to be the next president of the United States. And the conventions, they play different roles, but always a critical role. So that's how I see them.
What's the biggest challenge for a journalist covering a convention these days?
Well, the biggest challenge is to put a convention in its proper context. People get up and say things. Nominees say things, supporters say certain things, party leaders say certain things. Well, the journalist's job is obviously to report what what these folks say, but also to set it in context. Somebody says, all right, gives a speech about say the war in Iraq, and or how the surge, or how we get the troops out, or whatever. The journalist's role is, okay, report what people said about, say, what's happening in Iraq or what should happen in Iraq, but put it in a repertorial context. So people say, yes, but here's how we got here. Here's what the facts are on the ground right now. Here's what the facts were on the ground 5 years ago, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that, in order to, to do that, sometimes you have to walk on some political lines, but that's what we do.
If you could pick one issue that you think will be the issue this year, what is it going to be?
Well, I think the number one issue is an umbrella issue, I think, is that the public, the American public is dissatisfied. Some of it is with the political leadership that has come before, but it's also about certain events that were not under the control of the political leadership at any given moment. But the whole thing has made people uneasy. The current realities involving the economy, housing, and all that, and everything that's involved in that, the idea that Americans are dying in combat in far-off places, all of these things tend to make people uneasy. And they're looking in this, I think, in this election year for people who are going to take some of these issues, take some of these problems and calm them down a little bit, calm everybody down, and figure out ways to solve these that are not necessarily confrontational, that are not necessarily ideological, but that are practical, and that everybody can say, yeah, right, that makes sense. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Making sense, I think, is what this 2008 presidential election is about.
Jim Lehrer, you've seen it all and done it all. What's the big spark for you going forward? Why do you keep doing this kind of work?
Well, it's little boy, little girl work. It's like covering, covering fires. You hear the fire engine, and you want to know where it's going, and you want to know all the people, and you want to know where these people came from, and why do they think the way they do? Why do they have opinions that they have, and where they want to? What do they think can be done to solve problem A, whether it's housing or a military situation in Afghanistan, or what do we do about North Korea? What about Iran? What are we going to do about all this kind of stuff? And finding out where these solutions come from and whether these solutions will work is the curiosity that drives anybody in journalism, and it certainly drives me, and it always has. And somebody said, oh my goodness, you've been doing the same thing all these years. I have never done the same thing twice in over 40 years that I've been in journalism, and I never will.
That is terrific, Jim. Thanks for your time. We really appreciate it.
Hey, John, my pleasure. Thank you.